everybody. I'm Heidi Richardson. I'm the chair of the board of Oceanites. Oceanites is a science-based Antarctic research organization that's funded exclusively by the public.
So Heidi, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Oceanites and how you met Ron.
I was running a marathon in Antarctica 10 years ago. There was a fundraiser on the ship for Oceanites, and I had the opportunity to learn more about it and the science research that they're doing on adaptation with climate change, and just was completely enthralled with it. Became a donor, got to know the organization a lot more, joined the board, was on the board for a number of years, and now I'm fortunate enough to be in the capacity of chair of the board, helping really drive the mission of the organization.
And tell us a little bit about this marathon you were running in the Antarctic. I mean, what was that like, and how did you get involved with that?
There's a group of us that were on a mission to run a marathon on all 7 continents. So sort of have to do Antarctica. Antarctica is cold, as you can imagine, but actually one of the most stunningly beautiful places I've ever stepped foot on. Have always been intrigued by Antarctica, which I think most people who have read the book Endurance and Shackleton's trip to Antarctica and what they endured with that. And when I got there and stepped foot on the Antarctic Peninsula, I just absolutely fell in love. I felt like it was stepping back in time with just this absolutely pure place. It was stunningly beautiful and just seemed like it was only a few people in the world who have been fortunate enough to step foot there. And I was very fortunate to be one of those. And on the ship, there were some of the penguin counters and some of the researchers, and they did presentations talking about the importance of the research and the database they were collecting on adaptation, and adaptation being, how do you adapt to the changing landscape? We can't necessarily stop climate change on a dime. So what do we do to learn to live with it and try to help slow it down as much as we possibly can? And so just all of the presentations, they would have breakouts while we were at sea and do film presentations, do lectures to really learn more about the science and the research around it. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I've always been a conservationist. I'm on a number of boards that are focused on environmental issues and conservation, as well as some social justice issues. So it was just something that all around was very, very important to me.
What do you see the organization doing, going forward? What's your sort of main mission?
Yeah, I think we're trying to just educate people more about the impact of climate change and what we can do to adapt, really, right? Because when we're looking through the eyes of penguins as an avatar, we're seeing what are the implications of, this snow melting, right? With the snow melting, the water's warming, those types of things. How does that impact the krill fish that they feed on? So what does it mean from their food supply? Just like here in the US or, anywhere really on planet Earth, but thinking about the droughts that we're facing, the implications on food, the warming temperatures. The Pacific and the Northwest are going through massive heat waves right now. So is Texas and the Midwest. So everybody in their own particular area is feeling the impacts of climate change, whether it's through floodings and hurricanes and heat waves, fires, all of those types of things. And so we're trying to look at those impacts with what's happening on the ice in Antarctica. And Oceanites is studying what are the implications for food supplies? What's the implications for migration patterns where they have to go? Because penguins have to lay their eggs in the ice. And so you have to keep it in the ice. They can't just go hide behind a rock and leave their egg and nurture their egg in a warm place behind a rock. They need to have that ice. And so they're migrating to different places because of the change in climate, just like people are moving away from the shore in many, areas, whether it's in, the East Coast or Pacific Coast, wherever it might be, but they're moving away because of the rising sea levels and the implication of climate change. It's impacting, breeding patterns. It's impacting just the environment in general, where there's more disease coming out of the ground. We study, obviously, Oceanites is really focused on Antarctica, which is second in terms of warming of the planet, only to the Arctic.
Talk a little bit about the role of penguins and adaptation in Antarctica and the lessons that people can learn from that.
Penguins have been on the Earth for 40 million years, probably more. That's a long time. They've been through essentially every change in climate that we've seen, from the ice age to the change of the ice age. They've been around for a very long time, and they've survived it. And so what can we learn from them? We really focus on what they're doing from the adaptation side of it. What are they doing to find new food sources instead of just krill, looking at other fish to eat as food sources, looking at different places that they're moving to that are colder within the peninsula. So knowing that they have to move, they're not just going to sit and not be able to breed and not be able to bring in next generations and live with that. They're migrating, they're moving, they're changing where they're living. Just looking at some of their habits, I think everything that we're looking at that we can adapt to humans, we're looking through the eyes of penguins.
As somebody who works with the business community and portfolios, et cetera, financial community, do you think people understand what's happening in places like Antarctica? And how has Oceanites kind of changed your personal view of what's happening?
Most people haven't been to Antarctica, quite frankly. It's something they see in the movies or maybe in a book that they've read. So they don't see the impact. They don't see the impact, in the Arctic either. If you haven't been in some of these places, you don't see how dramatic the change has been, and, the warming of the planet. It's interesting, Rocky, if you think about what we've seen just with the Northwest Passage, right? One of the greatest expeditions was the Franklin expedition in Northwest Passage. Ship got stuck in the ice and disappeared. They found it, 2 years ago, which was amazing because it happened in the 1800s. But the Northwest Passage has been impassable. There are cruise ships now that go through the Northwest Passage. You don't need icebreakers. It's open. If that's not showing you the dramatic impact, that's a little closer to home. So maybe people see some of that impact. They haven't been to Antarctica, but if they went to Antarctica, it would be tenfold. And so with Oceanites, we see it because we're there every year. We've been there every year for 27 years. When you're there for 27 years, Oceanites sees the impact. And that's why it's so important to us to educate the world really about what's happening.
Because what happens in Antarctica can affect people around the world.
Absolutely. Look at what's going on in Texas with the heat waves and the electric grid, right? Look at what's going on with the flooding that we had seen in Texas. Look at the floods that we had seen in New Jersey and New York, these, 100-year storms, which end up being back to back every year. We see these fires in California. I live in Northern California. I'm evacuated every year, a couple of times a year, for devastating fires. These things are real. You can pick it, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's tornadoes ripping through, but the climate on the earth is drastically changing. And so we're just trying to build awareness to that. This is not a political discussion. You can decide whether you think it was man-made or something natural with the earth. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. You have to agree that climate is changing, but we're feeling the impacts. And if we can take even baby steps to abate that, why wouldn't you?
How do you think this is going to affect your friends and your family, going forward?
Well, it's really interesting. I was home for 3 college graduations over the last couple of weeks. 2 of them were environmental science majors. One was a marine biology major. This next generation, it's not just the millennials. The millennials are driving sort of a focus on climate, a focus on social issues, all of those things to try to make the world a better place. I mean, hands down, they're trying to align their investments with that as well. But they're really, you look at the Gretas of the world, right, that are out there as climate activists at a very, very young age. I mean, this isn't a fad. This is something that you've got these next generations sort of driving that. And then these 22-year-olds graduating from college focused on environmental sciences and those types of things because they know they want to have families. They want to have, children and grandchildren, but they need to be sure that the world's going to be a safe place to live and raise their children. So, these climate issues extend. People want to make sure that we can survive.
Like the penguins.
Like the penguins.
Are you optimistic about the future?
I am, because I think there's so much more attention to it. I got involved in the environment because my father, 50 years ago, started the conservation committee in my small coastal town in Massachusetts. because he saw the issues with erosion of, the sand dunes and those types of things, and really thought we had to do something to try to combat it. He saw all the pollution that was washing up on shore, all of those things was really driving the change. So, it's so important. And we had fits and starts with this over the last 50 years of people focused on the environment. Remember the old cans of hairspray, and then they outlawed all the aerosol sprays and those types of things because of the ozone layer. We were able to get the ozone layer back so we all didn't burn. There are things that we can do personally, but I'm seeing so much more commitment now from not only my generation. There's boomer generation, there's my generation, there's millennials looking at this change, and now this sort of next generation of kids graduating college and kids getting into high school that are really focused on their environmental footprint.
So they give you hope?
They do give me hope. They give me hope. I think, they give Oceanites hope, and it helps us drive our research and what's really important to us. In our donor base, we're getting lots of donations from a younger crowd as well that are, see the research that we're doing and are really excited. Some people get drawn in because of the penguins and think we're a Save the Penguins, which in a sense we are, but it's really more science, based research at Oceanites looking at adaptation.
Do you think the business community is catching on as well? Because frankly, if we don't have a future, the business community doesn't have a future. And I'm wondering, do you think the business community is aware of this?
My firm, an investment firm, Morgan Stanley, is committed to driving change, not only externally in the companies that we invest in, but also internally in terms of the organization of what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint, to go in the next couple of years to a net zero carbon. When we look at what we're doing in terms of the buildings that we're building, LEED certified, energy efficient buildings, changing some of the infrastructure in the existing buildings to be much more environmentally friendly, using renewable energy where we can, reducing plastic in any of our offices, and moving over to glass water bottles, just little things to make change. But the firm is absolutely committed personally in the organization to really reduce our carbon footprint. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of organizations.
Do you think that it's happening fast enough? Do you think this transition is going to save the penguins?
I think it's happening very quickly in Europe because there's a lot of regulations driving it. We don't have those regulations here in the US marketplace, but the SEC and a number of organizations are pushing to have more regulations around this. And it's a hot topic. It's a political debate on that. But I think the US is years behind Europe when we're looking at it. I mean, there's countries in Europe that are now running 80-90% on renewable energy. So, and I think there's more of a focus on Europe right now because of the crisis with Russia and Ukraine, and they're worried about what's going to happen to their supplies of natural gas moving into the winter. So I think they're even more focused on renewable energy. But those crises should have us all look inward and think about what can we do to be less reliant on these natural resources.
What do you see Oceanites' role in the future? I mean, what sort of goals does Oceanites have?
We make our research available. We have all the penguin counting and the database that we keep on penguins. We make that available free to anybody that wants it. Most people, it's too scientific for them to use, but all members of the Antarctic Treaty Organization are looking at that research. It's helping to look at the Antarctic Treaty and the number of tourists and the number of ships, the number of people that can step foot on Antarctica, really trying to figure out how we can abate, the environmental impacts of stepping on the land. When you look at a place like that, that's so pristine and you see the changes, it's hard to see the changes when we're in big cities, it's just hard because there's not a lot of free land to look at what could potentially be happening. You're not seeing the sea levels changing. You're not seeing the ice melting, but we're seeing that. We're seeing that in Antarctica, and we're seeing that every single year. We were able to go back this year and see the implications after a year and a half of not being able to be on the ice because of COVID. I just think it's vitally important to just understand what's happening, and Oceanites can see it firsthand through Antarctica.
And every year you go back, it gets worse. I mean, you see more impact.
You see more impact every year. There are certain areas where there's just no snow left. Which you don't think about that with Antarctica. If you had this picture of Antarctica in your head, you think it's, the people that get trapped there in the movies and then they're stuck there for the winter and, those types of things. But it is stunningly beautiful. When we ran the marathon, it was about 17 degrees, but there wasn't any wind. It was beautiful blue skies, nice warm sun. You were running on certain parts of the island and, some pretty deep snow. And then you'd hit another part and there was no snow. And it was just so strange to see no snow in Antarctica.
So do you think the penguins are going to help save the planet?
I think penguins can be the avatar to help us to adapt, to tell us what we need to do. They've been doing it for a long time and they're leaders at adaptation. So if we can learn what to do and think about our food supply, think about our environment, think about these migration patterns, think about next generation. Those are all things that are important. And if Oceanites can, help educate people on those issues, then I think it's great. And I don't see our research slowing down. I just see it continuing and getting better. We're starting to use drone footage for areas that we can't get to. So we've got a lot of technology that's coming into the science and the research of what we're doing. And we have an incredible database that, countries around the globe are utilizing the information that we're providing.
It sounds like it's such a powerfully important organization because, who else is doing this work?
Nobody. We're the only non-governmental agency that is completely publicly funded doing this research in Antarctica. We need all the help we can get in terms of continuing this research. There's no bias. There's nobody pushing us. There's no lobbyist pushing us in one direction or another to make a decision. We're just out there being completely independent. It's fact-based, it's science-based, and we're trying to drive the education. I think the education on climate is probably the most important thing that we're trying to do, right? Is just build the awareness so people can understand that they can have an impact personally. We're not going to be able to stop it, just too far at this point. But if we can do things in our own lives to help slow it, I think that's really important.
Oceanites is expanding in terms of its supporters and its companies like Viking. Tell us a little bit about that.
So at Oceanites, we are just so excited. This year, we're announcing a partnership with Viking Cruise Line. So Viking Cruise Line is going to be the official transportation of all the penguin counters for Antarctica. So it's absolutely wonderful. Not only have they given us support to do that, but they're becoming our official sponsor and giving us the transportation. On the ships, we're able to do educational sessions. We've got videos to learn more about climate and adaptation, videos to see what we've done in terms of the counting, the areas that we're doing, why it's important, what the implications are, what we do with the research, all of those data bits. And Viking undeniably is one of the best cruise lines, if not the best cruise line in the world. And nice small ships, people that are really committed to the causes with the tours that they do. And we're just thrilled to have them as partner.
And are you hoping to get more companies like Viking?
Yeah, we actually have a number of companies that are looking to be our official outfit provider for when we're out on the ice and counting penguins. So we're talking to a number of organizations that are doing that. We want to make sure that our missions are aligned, that we're not just getting anyone as a sponsor, but we want to make sure that they're truly committed to focusing on the environment.
And as you said earlier, I mean, more and more companies are focused on the environment. And you see it as good business, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a number of organizations that want to sponsor some of our research trips because they want us to bring some of their corporate executives. As all corporate executives now, if you're reading any research reports and annual reports, they're all talking about their sustainability efforts. Most companies now have a sustainability report, and they want to be able to say that they were on the ice with Antarctic research organizations. And we're really the only one that's publicly supported that does that. So So it's interesting to see the firms that have lined up after Viking.
Great. So the more the merrier, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want to, spread the word.